All right, so today we're going deep on this book, God and Man,
God and Man, yeah,
by Mustafa Mahmoud.
by Mustafa Mahmoud.
And uh and it's really kind of a look at like what motivates us. It's sort of a philosophical look at like different philosophies of life.
Yeah, it's a fascinating book. And, Mustafa Mahmoud himself was a really interesting guy. He was a doctor, a
Yeah.
medical doctor before he became a writer and a journalist.
Yeah.
And I think that background, really kind of comes through in his writing.
Totally. Yeah. And for you listening out there, our mission today is to really kind of look at, these core things, these core drivers behind human actions that Mahmoud kind of digs into in this book.
Yeah, and one of the things that he starts off with, is this idea that values actually change
Yeah.
over time, and,
Yeah,
and
like a lot.
like a lot. And one of the examples that he gives is slavery.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So, something that at one point was, deeply embedded in societies and in legal structures
Totally.
is now, completely condemned. And it makes you think,
Yeah.
about
That's
what
right.
are the things that we do now
Oh, yeah, for sure.
that in the future people are going to look back on and say, oh my God, how could
Yeah.
they possibly have done that?
Oh, totally. Yeah, like we all have those
Yeah.
blind spots, right?
Yeah. And he also talks about, kind of the diminishing power
Yeah.
of religious authority over time. And I think that all kind of sets the stage for these bigger questions that he has.
And it's not just sort of like these societal norms, right? Like
Yeah.
he really kind of digs into like how the idea of right and wrong, like good and bad, like how those concepts have shifted over time. Like you
Yeah.
think about like historical views on women or sexuality
Well,
compared to like how
yeah.
we think about those things today. And like,
Or even the legal system,
yeah, go.
like how we've gone from being purely punitive
Right.
to, trying to rehabilitate criminals.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, it's a huge shift
Yeah.
in our understanding of
Totally.
that.
And Mahmoud's whole purpose
Yeah.
with this book, right, was really just to kind of like assess
Yeah.
the intellectual traditions that we inherit
Yeah.
and figure out like what's timeless,
Yeah.
what's enduring, and what's kind of like
What's obsolete.
yeah, yeah.
And he does this in a way that's really engaging.
Yeah.
It's not like a heavy philosophical treatise.
No, no, it's really accessible.
Yeah.
And actually there's this really powerful poem
Oh, yeah.
that he includes in the book,
Yeah.
and it's by an unknown poet.
Yeah.
But it's basically about you know kind of the cost of pursuing the truth
Yeah.
and the eventual triumph of justice.
Yeah. It's really about conviction,
Yeah.
and living with purpose,
Yeah, even when it's hard.
even when it's hard.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that really underscores, these themes
Totally.
that we see throughout the book.
Total.
This idea of living with purpose.
With conviction. Yeah,
Wow.
absolutely.
Yeah, and he takes it even a step further
Yeah.
and asks us to consider these different gods
Uh-huh.
that we worship.
Wait, quote unquote gods.
Yeah, yeah.
Like what do we really serve?
Yeah, what are the driving forces in our lives?
Yeah.
Is it pleasure?
Right.
Is it pain avoidance?
Yeah.
Is it glory?
Right.
Self-interest,
Yeah.
a connection to the divine?
Yeah.
All these different possibilities.
And this is where it gets so interesting, right? Because he pictures life as this series of like
Yeah.
intersecting paths,
Right.
and each path is dictated
Right.
by whatever our primary motivation is.
Yeah, and he uses this great example.
Yeah.
He contrasts someone who's making a pilgrimage
Yeah.
to Mecca,
Right.
this long, difficult journey
Right,
with,
yeah.
a trip to the bank
Yeah.
or going to the seaside.
Right.
Just these everyday things
Right.
that we do.
And it's so true. Like there are people out there walking across,
Yeah.
North Africa to get to Mecca,
Yeah.
and like,
Yeah.
that's their
driving force.
driving force, right?
Yeah, totally. And it leads to this point that I think is really crucial,
Yeah.
which is that, each of us interprets
Yeah.
life through our own very specific lens.
Yeah.
And he uses this kind of funny metaphor
Yeah.
of a Byzantine monkey.
Oh, yeah.
Like think about all the the theological debates and the history.
The Byzantine Empire, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Super complex.
Super complex.
Yeah.
And so, this monkey is trying to make sense of all of this.
Yeah.
And Mahmoud's point is that, we're all kind of like that.
We all have our own kind of like philosophical framework that
It-
we're trying to.
We're tailoring it
Yeah.
to fit our own needs and our own biases.
Yeah.
You know?
Absolutely.
So we're creating our own reality in a way.
Totally. And so getting into like the nitty gritty, right? Like
Yeah.
Mahmoud actually proposes like 5 distinct paths
Yeah.
that people tend to follow.
Right.
The first one being like the pursuit of pleasure,
Yeah.
like really just like seeking,
Is it a
physical and material,
material gratification?
Yeah, yeah.
Just like
indulging.
indulging. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then there's the drive for creation,
Oh, correct.
where, people are really focused on
Yeah.
on intellectual contribution or artistic contribution,
Right.
And they're often willing to sacrifice
Yeah.
a lot
For their art.
for their art or for their ideas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So like almost like starving artist vibe.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Yeah. And then there's self-destruction,
Oh.
which is a much darker path.
Yeah.
Obviously, people who are engaging in
Yeah.
self-harming behaviors,
Right.
vices,
Right.
addiction,
Yeah.
things like that.
Yeah.
And then there's passive observation,
Okay.
which is this kind of detached stance,
Okay.
where people are just kind of
Like watching the world go
watching the world go by,
Yeah.
not really engaging,
Yeah.
just kind of witnessing.
Yeah.
And then finally, there's bewildered confusion,
Right.
which is this state of just constant,
Just like lost.
lost
Yeah.
uncertainty,
Yeah.
questioning without resolution,
Yeah.
you know?
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
So what does this all mean for you out there listening, right? Like Mahmoud is really challenging us to think about,
Yeah.
what are our guiding principles? Like, what are the things that are really motivating us?
Yeah. What are your gods?
Yeah.
What are the paths that you're choosing to walk down?
Yeah. And do those paths
Yeah.
align with like
Yeah,
your values?
exactly.
Like, what's most important to you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And does the way you're living your life actually reflect that? I think it's a really powerful question.
Yeah. It's a huge question. And I think it's
Yeah.
one that we all kind of
No,
have to grapple with.
grapple with. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, this has been a really fascinating
Yeah.
look at this book. I think,
Great.
we've barely scratched the surface, but
We've just started.
we've just started. Yeah.
Oh,
But hopefully you out there have something to think about.
definitely.
And what are you worshiping?
What are your gods?
What are your gods?
Yeah.
Figure it out.
Yeah. Figure it out.
Thanks for tuning in.
Thanks for listening.